A tiger turns and charges a man as the crowd roars with excitement. A merchant tries hard to sell his wares as to passerbyers in a crowded marketplace. And a tourist stops to take a selfie. These are all scenes coming from one of the most iconic arenas in the globe, the Roman Colosseum. Originally built as a symbol of the Romans' power and influence, the Colosseum has transcended time and has influenced the cultures around it for centuries now.
The construction of the Colosseums all start back with the Golden Palace. The Golden Palace was built by Emperor Nero, who decided to build this shrine for himself against most of the people of Rome's liking. And in 64 AD, this Golden Palace was destroyed by a huge fire that destroyed most of Rome. And it was in 68 AD that Emperor Nero died, and this sparked many, many civil wars within Rome. And in 70 AD, Vespasian returned to Rome as the new emperor and decreed that in the ruins of the Golden Palace be built a grand amphitheater. An amphitheater so grand that all the people in Rome can be entertained and watch gladiators. This amphitheater was built 620 feet by 523 feet, the biggest of its kind, and not only the biggest, but it's the only not built within a mountainside. I mean, this one was huge, historically huge. It took 10 years to make. Now, if you would, consider modern technology in a modern time to build something roughly of this size, it would take maybe a year, 6 months to a year. And this took 10 years with no scaffolding, no modern technology. It took them 10 years just with their hands, 10 years to build this humongous amphitheater. And it was Vespasian's decision to put as many seats as possible so that way all of the people of Rome and all the fans could come in and enjoy and watch the games and be entertained.
The games and events held in the Colosseum played a significant role in the everyday lives of Romans, in which the day was filled with combat, death, and destruction. The day started off with shows that featured ferocious animals and people. During this venue, trained hunters went up against treacherous animals in which depicted the earlier times of the animals hunts by the Roman aristocrats. Then the Romans would position just ordinary people into the arena to fight these dangerous animals. And finally, they would put pit animal versus animal to see these battles to death. And they would do this also in order to kill off the animals just so they could save money from feeding them and taking care of them. The morning shows also brought about public executions, which consist of criminals, prisoners of wars, deserters from the army or military, and any other people that weren't accepted into the Roman society. Some of these methods the Romans would use and put on display were crucifixion, throwing people to wild animals, torture prior to killing them, and a couple other techniques used for public execution would be they burn people alive, and finally just they tied two people to horses and watched them get ripped apart. And as the morning show started to dwindle down and people went to lunch and take a break, the afternoon shows would bring to the more exciting shows that made the history of the Colosseum popular. These shows consisted of the infamous and prestigious category of the events being the gladiatorial combats. Gladiators were mostly made up of slaves, criminals, and prisoners of war. These gladiators typically fought to earn their freedom, and at the same time they'd fight for the fame and glory. Other gladiators were made up of just free men that would voluntarily join in the fight, simply because they had no other thing to fall back on, or they just enjoyed the thrill of the fight. Gladiators would typically fight against each other in dual combat situations using swords, tridents, and nets. Other fights would sometimes include animals to help the fights make it more entertaining to the crowd, because the thrill of fighting each other and animals at the same time made it quite interesting to the Romans. The other fascinating part about the gladiator fights was it provided the crowd with direct opportunity into participating in the life and death decisions of the gladiators. This would be done when one of the gladiators lost his fight and gestured that he was defeated. Then the emperor would signal to the crowd by either yelling or by giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and allowing the crowd to choose the life or death of the gladiators. These games and events that during the Roman era provided an abundance of entertainment spectacles for the Romans. And since that time, the Colosseum has transitioned from death and destruction to more modern use as we see today.
While it's still not exactly known what brought about the end of the games being held at the Roman Colosseum, what is known is that in the centuries that followed in the medieval times, that the Colosseum was utilized by many different groups and in many different ways. Some of the most well-documented uses of the Colosseum during this time period are its use as a stone quarry and the use of a housing complex. Originally, there were many earthquakes that caused damage to the Colosseum and caused portions of it to begin to crumble and fall into ruin. As a result, people would often pilfer the stones and other materials in order to build roads, bridges, homes, hospitals, and even churches. Now, while these people took the material without permission, the church did often grant permission to certain high-ranking and powerful families. They were allowed to either take stone from the Colosseum to build their housing complexes elsewhere, and there were even some that built their complexes within the confines of the Colosseum. While that may have not been the greatest use for the Colosseum following its enormous history in the games, one article does make out the point that some Romans over the centuries used the Colosseum as a living space rather than steal material from it. And what's most interesting, and in recent years has been explored even more, is how the Colosseum was used as a living space, often referred to as a condominium. Hundreds of thousands of people lived in the Colosseum, renting out houses and workspaces. There they lived, sold their goods, made food, and even enjoyed a game of chess. The main courtyard space would be abuzz with culture and lots of different activity going on. This courtyard was where the gladiators had once fought. When the Colosseum was used as this living complex for many years, until 1349, when a major earthquake severely damaged the Colosseum, making it unsafe to be used as a living space. But during that time, it served as a cultural epicenter for the Roman culture.
Defining the modern time for a piece of architecture such as that of the Colosseum is different from what we would expect, because the modern time for the Colosseum is from the 16th century to the present day. Once the Colosseum had served its purpose, then there were multiple uses proposed for the use of the Colosseum afterwards. They ranged from a wool factory to a bullfighting arena, both of which were not decided upon for unknown reasons. Today, the Colosseum is one of Rome's most popular tourist attractions, if not its most famous tourist attraction. In recent years, it's become a symbol of the international campaign against the death penalty, or capital punishment, which was abolished in Italy in 1948. As it is a symbol for the against the death penalty, its normal nightly illumination of white is changed when the death penalty is abolished in a country, or the person whose sentence has been the death penalty is changed. It's changed from the normal white to gold. The Colosseum is no longer used for large performances because of the state that it is on the inside and due to the lack of seating. However, it hasn't stopped famous performers from using the outside of it as a backdrop for their performances. Even though the inside is in shambles, it's being refloored, and on the upper floors there is a museum dedicated to Eros. Also, in the recent centuries, the Colosseum has also been used as a location for Roman Catholic ceremonies, such as Pope John Paul II has used it for his Good Friday ceremonies. In conclusion, the Colosseum has gone from an arena of fierce games to one of the modern seven wonders of the world. The Roman Colosseum has been a historic piece of architecture both in the ancient world and today. Even after serving its initial purpose, it was never destroyed, never knocked down. It was adapted and made into something that would stand and evolve in usefulness to today, where it is a modern tourist attraction.